Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Welcome to this edition of the Print's YouTube channel, and we have with us today Professor Happymon Jacob, Dr. Happymon Jacob, who is a professor of disarmament studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University. He has to his credit 2 new books, and they're doing very well: The Line on Fire and The Line of Control. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Nayanima.
So, Dr. Jacob, if I can ask you, you've seen the recent tensions that are going on. I mean, that flared up last month, and the simmering tensions are still on. How do you view this recent developments, the Balakot strikes and Pakistan retaliating? According to you, and being an India-Pakistan expert yourself, how do you view the entire development?
I think very quickly there are several things that I think are lessons from this particular conflict. For one, I think India sort of went beyond its traditional strategic restraint in sort of responding to terror attacks against India, and doing so, it sort of went into heartland Pakistan and sort of struck back. And I'm not really talking about the right or wrong part of it, but I think as a fact, it needs to be established and put on the table that India has gone beyond its strategic restraint. However, I think given the fact that the Pakistanis struck back at India, and then we had this minor air battle in J&K, all that basically shows to me that suddenly the focus has shifted from terrorism, infiltration, etc., to escalation, as it were, which from an Indian point of view is not the great thing, because the entire international community is looking at India and saying, or India, Pakistan, and sort of hyphenating them once again and talking about escalation and not infiltration or terrorism. I think that's, to my mind, a really completely bad thing to happen. I think the other thing that has happened soon after the standoff de-escalated, after Abhinandan came back, in fact, after the 28th or so, there has not been much action pursuant to what happened. But I think what is noteworthy is that even though we lost no lives, neither side lost any lives in this standoff, you have the ceasefire violations going on all these days. And as of today, India lost 1 soldier and a couple of civilians. Pakistan lost, I think, 8 civilians and I think 2 soldiers or something. So you did, in the conventional escalation, there were no casualties. But after the conventional escalation was called off, you have this simmering tension, as you correctly pointed out, and you have several casualties as a result of that. I would call that war by other means. So that's really the depressing part of it.
Right. So we'll come to the ceasefire violation part, and I know you've done extensive research on that. One of the very few academicians who've got access to some of the clandestine operations that have gone on. But tell us something. Do you think with this Balakot strike, and the question that comes up again and again, do you see this India pushing the red lines, what many experts are saying, and the fact that India has set a new guideline, or maybe telling Pakistan that this far and no further?
Yeah, one could put it that way. I think that's the logic that the government is using. It actually sort of pushed the envelope a little further in September 2016 when it carried out
counter-terrorism measure.
Absolutely, when it sort of carried out the surgical strikes, but there was no follow-up thereafter. So if you don't have a follow-up, you sort of set a benchmark and you don't follow it up, and that sort of it dissipates. The importance of that dissipates. No, we have had several attacks thereafter against the Indian military installations in J&K. The fact that they were not responded to in kind, like the one in September 2016, shows that the message was conveyed in a robust manner. So same thing now at this point of time. You have the attack on Balakot, and India clearly, as you correctly pointed out, pushed the envelope and established a new military normal between India and Pakistan. The Pakistanis struck back, saying that we are not going to accept this new military normal. Had the Pakistanis accepted the new military normal, then that would have really changed the equation conventionally between the two sides. Now that they have struck back, the question is, if there is a Balakot 2 or Uri 2, is the government really going to repeat, say, the surgical strikes or Balakot? Now, if they don't, then there is no pushing off the envelope, as it were. So all the gains that you may have apparently gained from this Balakot attack completely dissipates, as it were. So I think I would sort of, as an analyst, I would say the outcome is somewhere in the middle. The India has conveyed to the Pakistani side, we're not going to take it lying down. The Pakistanis have said that fine, but we are also not going to take it lying down. So where is the balance? I think the balance will be really a matter of what happens next, and if there is going to be a reaction to that. I think that to me is going to be the most important part of it.
And how soon are you going to, are you expecting some kind of flare-up probably happening again, or do you think now it will be settled diplomatically? We've seen the surgical strikes, now this.
Yeah.
My question to you basically is, do you see India upping its ante on its?
No, I think, I mean, let me sort of put it this way. I don't think even the Pulwama attack was something that was planned within the Pakistani deep state, by the Pakistani deep state, and it was carried out to perfection. I don't think so. I think, given the fact that this is a Kashmiri boy who never went across to the other side, who was not trained by the ISI or the Pakistani deep state, the vehicle was local, the boy was local, there's a raging insurgency in Kashmir, and you don't know the provenance of the RDX yet. So it may as well be that the Lashkar, the Jaish movement carried out an operation not necessarily prodded by the Pakistani deep state. I don't know either way. So all I'm trying to simply argue is that one can't for sure say or link this attack with the Pakistani deep state. So if one were to use that logic, it is also not so sure whether the Pakistani deep state would want to carry out such attacks in future. If the Pakistani deep state wants to take it easy for the moment and not do anything at this point of time, and sort of wait for the new government to be in place, I don't see any tension sort of happening at this point, unless and until, of course, you have some organization taking matters into its own hand and doing stuff that it does. But I think as a choreographed, coordinated attack is unlikely. If that is unlikely, I don't think the Indian side has any reason to sort of up the ante. Even if there is an attack, I don't think the Indian side will up the ante that easily. It will sort of take into consideration all sorts of factors and then probably take the next step. But I think that is a matter of speculation at this point of time.
Also, Dr. Jacob, you've been one of the very few authors who've got access to GHQ, and I guess twice at Rawalpindi. But Imran Khan now says it's a Naya Pakistan. We will take, new sort of action, and you will see, Pakistan in a different format altogether. The other day he talked about Pakistan, striving to become another Dubai or Malaysia. Now, keeping all these two things in mind, how do you see Pakistan going on from now? After the Balakot strikes, is it a wake-up call for them, or do you think that no, they will definitely crack down?
The
role of the deep state.
Right. Let me put it this way. I think it is important for us to understand that the Pakistani military, the Pakistan army, and the Pakistani political establishment are on the same page at this point of time. Now, one could look at it negatively and say, hey, the Pakistani Prime Minister is propped up by the Pakistan army. To my mind, as an analyst, makes no difference. It's actually better for us that there is a certain amount of elite consensus in Pakistan. And if there is an elite consensus in Pakistan, when the Indian side interlocutes with the Pakistani side, the message doesn't get lost in Islamabad. It reaches Rawalpindi. Good for us. So to that extent, I see there is a certain amount of positive atmosphere there. But no country takes action against terrorists when you threaten them publicly, right? So, and in any case, Pakistan is not a Somalia as we might want to believe it is. It has the backing of the Chinese state at this point of time. It is friends with the Russians, and with the way things are turning out in the Afghan geopolitical landscape, the Americans are going to come back to court them all over again. So, if so, the Pakistani state is not an isolated state. So, if you want to sort of persuade or encourage the Pakistani state to act against terror, I don't think threats will do the trick. I think there will have to be a more nuanced political diplomatic approach to the whole thing, and not just throwing threats in the
But how do you think that will happen when the government stance has always been terror and talks cannot go together, and for all you know, if this government comes back, I'm sure the stance will remain the same?
Well, I think terror and talks have gone together in the past, number one. And number two, I think as a policy, the more the talks. You don't run away from problems, you face them. You face them by using all resources at your disposal. I mean all resources, including the tool called diplomacy. So I think it is a misnomer, in my understanding, that terror and talks cannot go together. One, the history tells you that is not how India has negotiated with the Pakistanis. Number two, if there is a terror attack, I think India needs to up the ante even at the diplomatic level. And I would say Pakistan is a complex state. It's a complex state. It has not just one loci of power. If so, it is incumbent on the Indian side to reach out to the multiple factions and power centers in Pakistan.
So my question is, what do you say to those, and there are many within the government and also outside experts questioning that all these years of dialogue, what has it given us? Why should we go for more, dialogues without seeing a proper outcome? Well,
that is looking at it from a symptomatic point of view. The reality is that there is the problem of extremism, terrorism, and in the region coming from the Pakistani side to the Indian side. Also because there is a certain environment in Kashmir, right? I mean, the reality is that you can't expect terrorism or insurgency to end if you don't resolve the Kashmir problem politically. So I think it is important for the Indian state as a responsible country, as a responsible member of the international community, that we resolve our own domestic problems. Now, once you do that, and if there are, and once you do that, you should also try and engage the Pakistanis. So I think it's a more complex process. There are no magic wands as far as dealing with. There is dialogue with the Pakistanis, dialogue with the Kashmiris. That is the only way, however unpopular that argument may be.
Okay, and Dr. Jacob, the last question, if I can ask you from your book, the Line on Fire, you talk about Operation Kabaddi, which is something we've not really heard. You've been been privy to this kind of operation through your sources and other former army generals. Tell us something about that, and just a little bit on how you think those kind of operations are still sort of there, or maybe that era is over.
While it may be true that large-scale operations of that kind is perhaps a thing of the past, because Operation Kabaddi was to capture 25 to 30 Pakistani posts through an offensive operation by dislodging the Pakistani soldiers perched in those posts across the line of control. Now, that needed a lot of preparation, and those preparations went on for three or four months in the middle of 2001. What the preparation for that operation tells me is that there are no saints on the line of control. These are two armies, these are two ruthless armies, these are two powerful armies who have been doing things to each other for a very long time. Now, I'm not discounting the fact that there is the larger environmental overhang of terrorism. I'm not discounting that. But on the ground, these are institutions, so these are entities that have been doing these kind of things. Capturing of posts, capturing of land, or carrying out bat action, or killing each other's soldiers, firing artillery shells into each other's territory. These have been done by both sides. In fact, you'd see that in the book I have talked about several more small land grab operations that have taken place. So one, I think what I would like to establish in the book is to say that, hey, a lot of things happen on the line of control which we are not privy to, number one. Number two, what happens on the line of control today in this age of multimedia and mass media does not remain on the line of control anymore. It has such escalatory potential that if you don't put in standard operating procedures, agreements, and proper mechanisms in place, these have a tendency, and this is potent with a lot of escalation, and that's dangerous in this age and milieu. I think that's the argument that I'm trying to make. I'm not really saying that these kind of operations take place on a daily basis. Small operations do take place, but the line of control, as I began by saying, what happens on the line of control is war by other means, and that needs to be put under control because it can escalate, it can spiral, and it can make the two countries go to the brink of a lot of tensions and potentially even war.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Jacob. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching the Print's YouTube channel. This is Nayanima Basu, and with me on camera is Sonia. Thank you.